Yeah, Warriors, we're drinking it down. Raise your voices and stir up this town. We're the champions of craft beer sport. Tall Can Audio, we hold down the fort.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome inside a Tuesday edition of the Tall Can Audio podcast. Matt Robinson along with you here in the TCA studio in beautiful Bytown, Canada. We're on social media at Tall Can Audio. Would love to hear from you there. And make sure you are following the podcast on whatever app you're hearing us right now. You guys know the deal right now, at least those of you who have been here for a while. And it's really those of you who don't know the deal, the new people here that I'm talking to right now. Make sure you stick around. I should say, before diving into anything else, a little reminder that on Thursday, Rob and I will be here. That will be May 15th, 2025. 10 years to the day from when we launched this podcast, which was, of course, May 15th, 2015. I don't expect any of you to remember that because none of you were listening. It was a pretty timid entry into the podcast world. It was just sort of two guys giving it a shot, feeling it out, a USB microphone on the center of my dining room table in a shitty old apartment. It's grown into something here. We've been able to turn it into something. We'll talk about all of that on Thursday as we mark 10 years of Tall Can Audio. So stick around. Like I said, make sure you're subscribed. Today, a few things to talk about. The Jays, who've honestly been a little neglected here through the early part of the Stanley Cup Playoffs. That's been a part of it. Normally we find a little bit better balance when it's just the Leafs. Well, the Oilers are always in, the Jets are always in, or whatever. But we added the Sens to the mix this year to the playoffs, and they've been gone for a little while. But the hockey thing has really sort of blocked out baseball here recently. We did talk to Stoughton a week ago. That was fantastic. You can check that out at tallcanaudio.com or wherever you're hearing us right now. From the batflip.ca, a week or two before that, Arden Zwelling from Sportsnet. But in the day-to-day, run-of-the-mill shows between Rob and myself, or Bunda has stepped in, Hoffley has stepped in, it's been all hockey all the time. So we will talk a little Jays today. We will talk a little about where the Leafs find themselves now with the Florida Panthers. We will talk about 4 overtime periods for the Ottawa Charge as they drop Game 2 in the PWHL playoffs to Montreal in, I don't know, you'd call it a spectacle, maybe more than anything else, when you play more than 2 games. Yeah, a spectacle. That's what we're going with. But first, we're going with a pint. We are doing our best to churn out as much material here in the TCA studio as we can, because I've been gone for a little while. As we've mentioned, some unwelcome renovations outside the studio. So now that we're back here, we've got access to the good fridge again, some of the good stuff again. We're going to have something here from Whippersnapper. This one has been hanging around in the fridge for a while. I've had it once or twice before on the show, including with Ian from the Whippersnapper Brewing Company or Brewery. I mix all these up. It's the Nita Beer Company. It's maybe Whippersnapper's Brewery. It doesn't matter. They're all breweries. This is the Risque Sexy Stout, which was released in time for Valentine's Day. Like I said, I've had it once or twice on the show before, but there's 1 or 2 left in my fridge. We're going to have one of them tonight. It is 6%, so just about right. We're not looking to do anything crazy here, like maybe we would have on Valentine's Day. Dark chocolate, all kinds of stuff going on here. We'll crack that open. Yeah, dark chocolate. I might be mistaken. A little hint of vanilla in there, I think. I've probably talked about it before on the show, including with Ian. I think Ian was in here on Valentine's Day. We had a little Taylor Swift lovey-dovey opening. The reason we're going with this one tonight, outside of the fact that I just enjoy it and think it's a tasty beer, is it says here, guaranteed to get you lucky. And who doesn't like that guarantee? I am hoping that the Leafs are going to get lucky here. Yeah, they've let the series get equal again. It's back to 2-2. But if there's one thing that I know about my friend Ian McMartin over at the Whippersnapper Brewing Company, it's that he too would be hoping the Leafs are about to get lucky. It does say right underneath, not an actual guarantee. I choose to believe that's just for legal purposes. He doesn't want to put himself at risk. He would be right here beside me, hoping that the Toronto Maple Leafs are about to get lucky and dethrone the Florida Panthers in a best 2 of 3. Leafs have 2 games at home now. Look, it's an interesting spot the Toronto Maple Leafs find themselves in at this point. Themselves, more than themselves. I guess it's how do you want to frame it? And, we sort of talked about this in the last series when it was Toronto versus Ottawa. And, the Leafs go up 3-0. They lose game 4, and then they lose game 5. You're like, well, is it happening again? Are they blowing it? Are they panicking? But most people said Toronto in 5 or 6. So unless you're prepared to let Ottawa win 1 or 2, you're not going to win in 6. You'll win in 4 or 5, right? And so I think if you had told a lot of Leaf fans before this series started, this would be 2-2, and, you'd be best 2 out of 3 the rest of the way with home ice advantage. I think Leaf fans would have taken it. But when you go up 2-0 and then you drop the next 2, yeah, it's sort of it gets you a little flustered, or we've pissed away our 2-game lead, and these sorts of, and those are reasonable feelings for fans. It's unreasonable for media, but I cover that too much as it is, so we won't delve too deep into it today. But there was, right after the game, a headline that was posted almost immediately that said, after building a 2-game lead, Toronto has fallen back even. Toronto has fallen. It's not that the Florida Panthers have valiantly fought their way back into the series. It's not that both teams have held serve at home, right? Winning 2 each on home ice. No, Toronto is falling. We spent a couple of days before that saying this Toronto team is different. Let's build it up. Let's sell some newspapers and get some clicks on that. But we're done with that story now. Now we got to tell the Toronto is falling apart story. And look, might be true. We'll see. But I don't know anyone who picked Toronto in 4 or 5. I know a couple of crazy bastards who said Toronto in 6 or 7. That is still on the table. The wide majority, myself included, said Florida in 6 or 7. And that, too, is still on the table. So it's path. And I know I harp on that too much. I hear from you on social media. I see your DMs. I see your comments, whatever it might be, saying that that's a thing that I harp on too much. But it adjusts your expectations. When we said it would be Toronto over Ottawa in 6, and then Toronto wins the first 3, you get greedy. And you're like, just sweep these fuckers. Well, that was on the table, and we can talk about their lack of killer instinct when they didn't do it, but it left Toronto in 6 on the table, and in the end, that's what happened. So the fact that a lot of you out there picked Florida in 6, that's still on the table. Maybe some of you were panicking when Toronto was up 2-0. In fact, I know some of you were panicking when Toronto was up 2-0. But here we are now, Toronto, Florida, at 2-2. And there's some stories emerging, as they will in every series. One of them at this point would be whether or not Toronto should make some lineup adjustments. I think I probably would. I'm not sure I'm expecting them to. One of the things that Craig Berube has A, been known for before he got here, and B, certainly been known for, once he got here, and when I say here, I don't mean Nepean, just west of Ottawa. I don't know why I do that. I don't live near Toronto anymore. Since he got to Toronto, is not panicking. He is a player's coach. He's going to trust you to figure it out. He's going to kind of have your back while that happens. And so he doesn't want to show any panic. And so after 2 games at home against Ottawa, we talked about this. He wasn't loving what he was seeing out of Nick Robertson, and that seemed legit. He took him out and played Pacioretty. And I think, if nothing else, it was, well, on the road, Travis Green and the Sens will get their matchups. We don't love Nick Robertson and, his own zone. Maybe there'll be matchup issues there. We trust Pacioretty as a veteran to be able to stand up to that a little better. That's fine. And that was the last change they made to the lineup. It's been that way since Game 3 of the Ottawa series. So now that you were up 2-0 and you're back tied at 2, would he be hesitant to signal that he's worried? Does it actually mean he's worried? Would it show panic by making some adjustments? I'm not sure it does. I think sometimes it's just identifying where you're struggling and trying to match up better with your opponent. But he has been hesitant to make big changes. I would make a couple. And we can argue about how big they are. Toronto doesn't have a Rocket Richard winner just waiting in the wings, right? Sitting up in the press box or anything. You're talking about guys like David Kampf. You're talking about the aforementioned Nick Robertson. I would consider bringing both of those guys back in for at least Game 5 when you control the matchups. And I'll tell you why. I don't really think Calle Järnkrok has ever totally caught up since missing a bunch of time during the regular season. And I think Scott Laughton, whose game I like, I think he and Steven Lorentz have been pretty good in this series. Now, they haven't created a bunch of offense, but even in the 2 games in Florida where both of Toronto's bottom 6 lines kind of got buried, I feel reasonably confident with Lorentz and Laughton out there. And it's not like I feel uncomfortable with Järnkrok, but I just feel like you're having a hard time letting him catch up, and maybe he just won't this year after the amount of time he missed. I would consider bringing in David Kampf on the 4th line to play in between Laughton and Lorentz. Now, that's a risk. David Kampf hasn't played in a long time at this point, certainly not through the playoffs. But he can add to your penalty kill. He's a little speedier than Järnkrok, so even on the forecheck, like, he's not bringing you anything more offensively than Järnkrok. But it's a different look. And maybe you get Laughton out of the middle and allow him to get back out on the wing, maybe forecheck a little more, and Kampf can kind of get in. And it's still, like I said, it's not going to score you anything more, but maybe it's just a different look. And I would be confident, comfortable, whatever you want to call it, the rest of the way if you did that. Now, if Kampf gets in Game 5, looks like shit, and fuck it, that was a mistake, take him out and go back to Järnkrok, fine. But I think there's a possibility if you make that move, he stays in the lineup. The other one that I would make while you're at home that I'm not sure would stay in the lineup would be to go back to Nick Robertson. But at this point, I don't think I'm taking out Pacioretty. He's moved up and down the lineup okay. Look, he's scored some big goals for you. He's created a couple plays for you. He's being very physical, and you've sort of been moving him around. When you're trailing, he plays up with, or even to start the game, with Tavares and Nylander to try and create offense. When you're leading, he often gets pushed back down in favor of a Holmberg, somebody a little more responsible to help those other 2 guys defend. I would consider taking out, I'd consider taking out McMahon. I don't think they will. He scored 20 goals for them this year. Big body, but he just doesn't look right, and he hasn't scored in 21. I'd consider taking him out. More likely, I think I would take out Holmberg. And I know that goes against what I just said in terms of his ability to slide back up for Pacioretty and allow, him to be part of your defensive conscience. But I think at home, for Game 5, I would bring Robertson in, I would take out Holmberg, and I would have that 4th line. And we've been kind of debating this, right? Which is the 4th line, which is the 3rd line between the Lorentz Laughton group or the Domi McMahon group. I would put Robertson with Domi, and look, I'm ready to take Domi out. We'll talk about his hit in a minute. They're not going to, but that is something I would consider. But since they're not going to, I would put Domi out there with McMahon and Robertson, and I would shelter the shit out of them. Because you control the matchups at home, right? You trust Matthews in his own end. You trust the Kampf, Lorentz, And even if it's not Kampf who goes back in, if they don't make that move as well, you would trust that line in its own end. So you never have to put Domi, Robertson, McMahon out in the defensive zone, short of them icing the puck. All offensive zone starts, and at times in the regular season, if you think back, those three had a little bit of success together. Is that enough to get McMahon going, who you badly need to get going, right? Great, you were a 20-goal guy in the regular season. You haven't scored in 21 games. Like I said, I'd be prepared to talk about taking him out. I just don't think that's on the table. But you could. You could leave Holmberg in to be the conscience on that kind of 3rd/4th line and put Robertson in for him. I do still think there's a chance Florida pushes Robertson around a little bit. That's part of what you were seeing from Ottawa. They were pushing him around a little bit, and he had taken a couple of penalties. And look, these Panthers are not the Ottawa Senators. It's a slightly different game out there. I don't know if making 2 moves to Craig Berube would suggest panic or too much change, not standing by his guys, but I would consider trying to throw a slightly different look at them while you're at home. And look, maybe it's just while you're at home. If you manage to win that one, maybe Robertson comes back out when you're on the road. Because you did see Paul Maurice exploit those bottom 2 lines while they were in Florida. Toronto just doesn't have the depth there. So, but while at home, maybe that's something you could look at. The other talking point is whether or not you'd swap Marner for Nylander. We always criticized Sheldon Keefe for being too married to Marner with Matthews. Man, that ain't nothing compared to how married to it Craig Berube has been. We didn't see almost any time. I guess back in December we saw some time where Matthews was with Nylander. I can't imagine he's going to go away from it, but that too is kind of a two-sided debate, or everything is double. I don't even know what's the double-sided edge, double-edged sword. That's it. It's a double-edged sword. I got there. I figured it out. Right now, Matthews and Marner are not putting up, or at least on the road, didn't put up enough points, didn't score enough. But they are doing a pretty good job of sawing off the Barkov line. Nylander is not Marner on the defensive side of the puck. Now, in Florida, Paul Maurice got the Barkov line away from Matthews. He actually put Barkov on Nylander and Tavares, which makes sense because while Marner and Matthews are playing reasonably well defensively, they aren't posing the same threat that Nylander was. And even the Tavares was. Tavares scored twice in Game 3. So he controls that lineup. And then once you get those guys going, it's also an easier offensive matchup for Florida, right? Tavares and Nylander are not as good defensively. So, you trust Barkov and Reinhart to shut down Tavares and Nylander, and then you love the idea of Barkov and Reinhart in the offensive zone against Tavares and Nylander. You think you can control that matchup. So there's some moving parts here. I did mention a couple of weeks ago, maybe you need to split up Marner and Matthews because traditionally it's Marner to Matthews and that big shot. And right now, Matthews doesn't seem to have that big shot. So would you be better off letting Matthews play the playmaker, which he's doing reasonably well right now, for Willie? And then Matthews is the defensive conscience. He can still do that side of it, but you don't love your matchup as much anymore. Tavares goes to Marner, on that line. Now Marner is the setup guy for Johnny T. You could do it. I don't think they will. I think Craig Berube has been married to these pairings most of the year, and I would be surprised if he wanted to change much. Now, maybe for a period, you take a look at it. But look, I'm having a hard time with the Matthews talk right now. Maybe you guys are too. I don't know. There are people out there right now who are sort of burying Matthews for not scoring. And look, if you go back and you look at this over the last 8 or 9 years or whatever it's been, this era of Toronto Maple Leafs hockey, Yeah, Matthews has not done enough in the playoffs. He hasn't necessarily vanished, but he hasn't excelled. He has not maintained his scoring pace from the regular season. Last year against Boston, obviously there was that injury. You know what? But he's not scoring in these playoffs the way you expect him to. But if you watched the whole season, there was no reason for you to think going into the playoffs he was ever going to. He was never the 69-goal guy this year, which would have been nice. It's whatever this injury is, whatever's going on, has been going on since Christmas. And so there was no chance that he was suddenly going to show up in the playoffs and start scoring like that. But he also hasn't even really been the 30 to 35 goal guy that we did see during the regular season. And he's got like 8 years of playoff history that he's not exactly erasing right now. Like, it would be easy if he had always showed up in the playoffs and dominated the way he can in the regular season. It would be easy to go, yeah, well, he's hurt. What are you going to do? But he's never really done it. And so that's being tied into whatever is going on this year. And so I tend to want to be understanding, but there's an awful lot of history there that says, man, I don't care. I don't care what the reason is this year. Just find a way. Just fucking figure it out, right? Even though that's completely irrational. He has been very good defensively. He has been very good on the penalty kill. He has been very good in the shutdown role, you know, the 200-foot game, the face-off stuff. And that is the type of thing that for the first, 3, 4, 5 years of this group, everyone criticized him for. These guys have to give up this idea that they're going to go out and play individually and put up a bunch of points, and they have to sacrifice individual stats to do what you need to do in the playoffs. I'm not sure Austin Matthews has chosen to give up his individual stats, but he doesn't have them, but he has been doing all those other things that we asked of him earlier. So I don't know. If you watched this entire year of Toronto Maple Leafs hockey, watched them get through Ottawa and then get to the Panthers and said, good, this will be the time where Austin Matthews scores 6 goals in a series and powers them through. I don't know what made you think that was ever going to happen. He's not healthy enough to do it. That doesn't mean you have to give him a pass. At $13 million and the team captain and all the hype, all of it, I get why you're frustrated. I'm fucking frustrated. But it's sort of a waste. I don't know. I don't know what to do with that discussion right now. You've got a lot of very real current factors weighing into a story that dates back an awful long time, and it's a legit story. Speaking of wastes, Game 4, Joseph Woll, I think, look, when you came in, if you were one of those people who was optimistic and thought the Leafs might be able to win this series, even you had to agree Joseph Woll, and at the time would have been Anthony Stolarz, your goalie was going to have to steal you at least one game. The Panthers are very good. Sometimes you just need the goaltender to say fuck you and win you one. You saw that out of Joseph Woll in Game 4, and they didn't win it. They didn't score. It wasn't a good game, honestly. It just, sometimes you lose and you play well, and like Game 3 was a bit of a shit show. They had moments of playing well. Florida had moments of playing well. Goes to overtime. You own part of overtime. They own part of overtime, and they take a shot, goes off one of your guys' gloves and into the net, and well, that's it. Game 4, Toronto just wasn't any good. And that was so disappointing because Joseph Woll was terrific. And you look at those first, 4 penalties in the first period. It's funny because all of them are penalties. Like the 4th one is not even up for discussion. That's the one that gets lobbed over the glass. But it's hooking. It's whatever. They're all legit, but they're all things that you will see at other moments get let go. And so you get frustrated, get flustered. Like, come on, can we get some consistency here? Even though they are legitimate penalties. And you kill off the first 3, and then Ekman Larsson lobs one over the glass, and now you can't even talk about it. It's not even up to the referee's discretion to be able to say, well, I've already called 3 on them. Maybe I'll let this go. You can't. It's crystal clear. Your penalty killers have been worn down. You finally give one up, and you never really get going after that, right? You've got guys who don't participate in the penalty kill who've sat on the bench for the entire period. It just wasn't a good game. They had their moments in the third period. They got a couple of looks, and Bobrovsky was good, and Florida's totally fine to play with you in a 1-goal game like that. When they're leading, they're comfortable there. But, it's just they never got off to a good start there. And if you say that Joseph Woll is going to have to steal you a game in this series, that was the one. He just gave you that, that effort that was worthy of stealing a game if you could have just showed up and scored a fucking goal. To take 4 penalties in the first period and only give up 1 goal, is a minor miracle. You go to the first intermission and go, okay, let's not do that again. We're still in this, only down by a goal. We got all this firepower. You just couldn't find it. It just never came. So you worry that opportunity has passed you by. And, maybe that's as good of a look as you're going to get at that opportunity of having your goalie steal you one. He put in the effort to do it, and you weren't able to get it done for him. That's a bummer. Lots of other little factors, and I don't even want to downplay it. Like the Max Domi thing on Barkov at the end. It's a shitty hit. He's not getting suspended. He got fined. Look, you guys know what I think about Max Domi. If they'd have suspended him, I would not have been heartbroken. He's taking shitty penalties all over the place. He's not contributing all that much. And when I say that, he's got like an overtime winner. He's got a goal somewhere. I don't want him in my lineup. He's not that good. So if he'd have been suspended, I'd have been fine with that. And if you think he should have been suspended for the hit, I'm largely fine with that. But it's the inconsistencies that drive you crazy. Because the amount of charging plays that Florida runs every night, and it's sort of this idea of normalizing it, right? Well, that's just how Florida plays. We couldn't possibly call them all. Fuck you, call them all. They don't. I'm just one of those people. I believe Florida gets away with a little more than they should, and it's just because that's what they do every night, and you're sort of like, oh, those scamps. Those crazy kids down there. What could we possibly do to stop them? So I just have very little time for the whining from the couple dozen Panthers fans that exist. The Domi hit was bad. Deserved to be penalized. I wouldn't have had a huge problem if they suspended him. They chose not to. It's a fine, and we'll move on. We'll see from there. It's interesting to see Sam Bennett on the mic after the game talking. He was suddenly unable to talk after game 1 after eliminating a goaltender from the series. Probably just a coincidence. It's no problem. When he scores a goal, I can talk. When I'm the center of a shitty play, I couldn't possibly be made available. That's Florida Panthers. That's the integrity and the whatever of your Stanley Cup champs that always do things the right way, the physical way, the hockey way. Yawn. Get out of here with that story. So we'll see. The extra day off, they don't play till Wednesday. I don't know if it really benefits or hurts one side more than the other. I guess if you're one of those people who subscribes to the theory the Leafs might be melting down, then you would have wanted to play again right away instead of having to sit around and think about it for an extra day. I'm sure, Matthew Tkachuk's been beat up. The extra day can't hurt him. Joseph Woll, much like Stolarz, is not a guy used to starting every other night over and over and over. Maybe the extra day helps him. Maybe it helps Bobrovsky, who's the oldest goalie in the playoffs this year. There's a number of ways of spinning that. I don't have a concrete opinion on any one of them. Maybe it helps your team. Maybe it helps my team. Who the fuck knows? It is strange, though. Normally, they use the extra day to try and get you back on turn for the Leafs to play on a Saturday night. It's not going to happen at all. I don't particularly care. The Leafs are the big draw. you can play them at 11 a.m. on Nickelodeon, and people will tune in and watch. But for whatever reason, Sportsnet is married to the idea that the Leafs have to play Saturday. For whatever reason in this series, it's not happening. Whatever it was, series started Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. Skip a day to get back on Wednesday, Friday, Sunday if it goes 7. So we'll see how it plays out. Man, I'll be honest with you. I was expecting a fairly nice, easy Sunday of hockey watching, probably in and out, do a couple of errands around the house and come in and out of a couple of games. But the two big ones for me were 2 o'clock, Ottawa Charge, Montreal Victoire, and then 7:30, Leafs Panthers. And I never in a million years would have suspected that 2 o'clock start for the Ottawa Charge would still be going on when Leafs and Panthers started at 7:30. 4 overtimes for the Victoire and the Charge. And the craziest thing about that is it's a year to the day since the Montreal Victoire went 3 overtimes. I wonder what you guys think. I love hockey. If I had been in arena for Charge versus Victoire, and it goes 4 overtimes, and almost to the end of that, there was just over 5 minutes left in the 4th overtime, I think I might have wanted to go home. I don't know whether I actually would have had it in me to leave. It's a lot of hockey to sit there for over 2 games, TV commercial breaks and loud music in the in-house arena and speaking of TV commercial, can we stop? I tweeted this out. When we're going 4 overtimes, those little intermission interviews where you grab a player who's going back to the locker room for the intermission and how do you feel about the way things are going? Have you ever played in a game this long? Leave them alone. Let them go get some carbs. Let them go get some water. And they'll tell you in the morning about how important it was to get pucks in deep and to give 110% and to just play our game. Leave them alone. There's nothing to be added. Look, I don't find those, intermission interviews to be particularly insightful anyway, in any league. To be doing it well into your 4th overtime, I felt pity for those athletes. They made a big deal, and reasonably so, on the broadcast of during the 3rd and 4th overtime. The trainers were bringing those, prepackaged mustard packets out to the bench. I guess there's something in mustard that stops you from cramping. When you're playing that long, you're dehydrated. Man, it's a go. It's tough. I guess mustard can help fight that off, which is odd. They also had pickle juice out there. I only laugh because I'm sure many of you people have heard of this. I hadn't before, but back at the old family cottage, we would get together with a bunch of friends around the lake once a year, and there'd be like a, rib contest or a chili cook-off or some sort of thing like that. And each year there would also be like submit a drink for people to try. And I can't remember now what the one my dad offered, but it was like Jameson whiskey and like pickle juice, like fresh out of the pickle jar. Like, this is terrible. Now you do one, you shoot one, and then the other right after. They're not mixed together. But that's what this reminded me of. Like, I'm sitting here, I got my next shift in quadruple overtime coming up, and someone's passing me a water bottle full of pickle juice. Pass, thanks. I'll just let my hammy seize up. I don't care. I look at games like that, and it's entertaining, and there's a spectacle, and I think that's probably the part that would have kept me from leaving the arena. But I would have wanted to. There would have been a part of me that was just, all right, that's enough hockey. Now at home on your couch, you can grab another beer, you can get up and kind of putter while keeping one eye on the TV. But like that started at 2 o'clock. At 7:30, the game wasn't over, and I'm about to sit down and watch the Leafs. That's a lot of hockey with no break. And had I been in the arena, it might have been It might have been me who checked out. I know. People judge when you're leaving the arena early if you can't quite make it. Whatever it might be, that might have been me that bailed out. Aaron Ambrose, top defender for Montreal, plays 58 minutes in that game. Actually falls a couple minutes short of what she played in the triple overtime game that Montreal played last year, where she played 61 minutes. 61 minutes. She played more than a whole game herself that day, just shy of that this time. Joss Larocque for Ottawa was the top minute eater at 56 minutes. And you kind of look around. Laura Stacey, a forward for Montreal, played 46 minutes. That was the most any forward played in the game. And it was sort of cruel and unusual punishment as an Ottawa fan to know that on the other side was Marie-Philippe Poulin, who you may be aware has a tendency of scoring big overtime goals, big game-winning goals. And it was like this ticking time bomb every time she was out there of just like, oh, this is the time she's going to burn us. And normally I'm down with that. Normally I'm great with that because she's usually roasting the Americans playing for Team Canada. Now she's playing for Montreal against my team. And it just never happened. But Laura Stacey was out there for 46 minutes. And Renee Desbiens, the Montreal goaltender, put up 63 saves on 65 shots, which is just insane. Gwyneth Phillips for Ottawa, 53 saves. And look, it was interesting, if you'd have looked at this game in an alternate universe, it's Emrance Mashmeyer for Ottawa in goal, who is their top goaltender, facing Anne-Renee Desbiens, right? The top two goalies in Canada. This is always the tandem when we go to an Olympics or go to a Worlds. And Mashmeyer's been hurt, and Gwyneth Phillips has come in and been asked to be pretty good in a few different situations, and she's met that challenge. She's been a star. I don't think anybody saw this coming. Can you play, over 2 games for us back to back? And by the way, don't let them score for the last 4 or 5 periods. Cool, thanks. We'll see you. We'll send out some mustard packets for you. Gwyneth Phillips has been incredible. That series tied at 1 apiece, headed back to Ottawa. They had spaced out these games on Mother's Day, right? 2:00 start, 5:00 start. Because there was another game between Toronto and Minnesota. The Ottawa-Montreal game started 3 hours before the Toronto game, and they only ended 57 minutes apart. Just an insane amount of hockey. Good for them. Hell of a showcase. Hell of a spectacle. But I might have tapped out. I'm just being honest. I'm just being real. Don't give me shit. Don't tell me it would have been a pleasure for you to sit there for over 2 games back to back. They would have shut off the beer midway through the third period. That's what they do, right? It's all about public safety. We don't know when the game's going to end. We don't want, people making last-minute stampedes for beer or walking out hammered. So they shut the beer off at the beginning of the third, about 10 minutes through the third. Yeah, we're actually going to play 5 more periods from now. Can we get you a water? Or some pickle juice. The Blue Jays have swept the Seattle Mariners. And that one feels good, right? Because fuck the Seattle Mariners, right? They've created too many problems in our world. And it's always kind of cool when you go out there and you see the Western Canadian Blue Jays fans overrun their ballpark. That really didn't happen this time, the overrun. And Rob and I talked about that on an earlier episode when Craig Simpson was sort of talking about how Toronto hadn't overrun Florida the way they normally did, in the NHL. You can also take a look at some of the statistics on Oilers fans not being quite as strong in Vegas as they have been. And we all know why that is. Many of the people that are covering this are pretending not to because they don't want to get political. And I don't care who you vote for, but a lot of people right now it's not true, I do care who you vote for. A lot of people just aren't going to the U.S. And so there were certainly Jays fans there, and I'm not going to fault you. If that's your thing, you do every summer. Whenever the Jays go to Seattle, you go. I probably wouldn't have, but that's summer vacation for some people. You're probably annoyed at what point in the season this showed up. Second week of May. But certainly the numbers were way down. And that, there were a couple of people who covered that particular story. But the more important one is that the Jays grabbed 3 games there. And let me hit you with this number, because to me this was equal parts alarming and yet absolutely yes, I absolutely believe that. The Blue Jays have now scored 5 runs or more in 4 straight games for the first time since April of 2023. Does it feel like that, Jays fans? 2023 was supposed to be that dreadful year. Well, it was that dreadful year where we always they can't hit, and they still make the playoffs. And it was just a drag to watch. That's that season, that bummer season. And we come into 2024, we're all like, thank God that's behind us. We'll solve our offensive woes with Justin Turner. Oh no. It didn't pan out. 2024 was a different kind of offensive struggle, but it was still just as frustrating to watch. And we go through that whole year where we never string 4 games together where we score 5 runs or more. They finish up in LA or Anaheim at the end of last week where they avoid getting swept there. Put up 5 or more in the last game there and all 3 games in Seattle. And I don't know if that says to you they've turned a corner, found their bats. But it was nice to see, and yet when laid out like that they haven't done that in over 2 years. It was, like I said, it was very much, that can't be right. Can it? I can't believe it. And yet, yes, that absolutely feels like exactly what I've watched for the last 2 years. There's no chance they've done that. They sit here now, 20-20 after 40 games. And I'm not sure we know a whole lot more about them than what we knew on opening day. They have swept a series twice. They've also been swept twice. They have 2 4-game winning streaks and 2 4-game losing streaks. All told, as we sit here, 20-20. We all talked about the beginning of this season and how tough that schedule was going to be. And so here you are. You're 500. I guess everything's still out in front of you. But it feels like more of the negative things have been reinforced than more of the possible positive things we were hoping. The lineup just hasn't been good enough. And yet, inside of it, Alejandro Kirk does look like he's hitting the ball harder. Like he's a little more square to the ball when he's making contact. That's important. That was one of those things we needed to have happen. And yet, Alan Roden hasn't really worked out. Will Wagner, it didn't really work out. Jonathan Clase is up here. How long-term is that for? Varsho took a long time to get back, which we all knew was coming. And yet, he immediately kind of had to take a step back again. I don't know. I don't know what this lineup is going to be, is going to bring us. I feel like that remains an unanswered question, and yet it still feels like I would lean towards it's probably not going to be quite good enough. We've seen Gausman look very good and not. We've seen Bowden Francis. I don't know what that guy's going to give you. It was the low-hanging fruit to compare him to Davis Schneider from a couple of years ago, who finished the 2023 season on an incredible hot streak and just couldn't get there again in 2024. It just wasn't really him. Well, Bowden Francis finishes the 2024 season looking like an all-time great. And I think it would have been foolish to expect him to be that in 2025, but so far he hasn't even looked to be in that neighborhood. So there's just, I feel like we sit here as I record this on May 12th, going, I don't know. You're back to square one. You're 20-20. Maybe it goes well from here. Maybe it doesn't. It's just so funny. Like I said, 2 times sweeping, 2 times being swept. 2 4-game win streaks, 2 4-game lose streaks. I don't know. I don't know what the hell you are. There's been moments, certainly more good than bad in the bullpen, but they're being used way too much. When you don't blow anybody out, when you never have a 4 or 5 or 6 run lead, or frankly, deficit, you keep going to those guys. You're still in the game. You got to pound somebody. Or, less desirably, but still on the table, you got to get pounded by somebody. So you can run out those low leverage whatever and just let the game go as it's going to go. If you got to use Hoffman every other night, sometimes 2 in a row, sometimes for 2 innings, yeah, sometimes he's going to blow up like he did in Anaheim. It's not on him. You got to create some distance. You got to create some low leverage innings. So they're back to 500. No idea what that means moving forward, but it has been interesting to watch. And the Jays, frankly, around here have taken a little bit of a back seat through the hockey playoffs, which shouldn't be the case. I like talking baseball. I like watching baseball, but I suppose you could make the case that we haven't missed anything. They're back to 500 and right where they started at the end of March, and we'll see what happens from here. But good to see them scoring some runs. 4 in a row now with 5 runs or more. That's probably enough. I try to keep these ones where it's just me reasonably short, and often I succeed. Often I don't. This one I have not. So that'll be enough. Like I said, on Thursday, join Rob and myself as we mark 10 years of this stupid podcast. Tall Can Audio started on May 15th of 2015. And Thursday, of course, May 15th, 2025. We'll reminisce a little. We'll kick some things around at that point. Hope you'll join us then. Subscribe to the pod wherever you're hearing us. Follow along on social media at Tall Can Audio. My name is Matt Robinson. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you then.
Yo, can warriors